everyone is I to themselves. You call yourself I call myself I. Everyone you know calls himself I, and you call everyone else you. So there's this common thing, this thing we all have in common, where we all call ourselves I. And so you can see it as each brain is responsible for this I sensation. And in philosophical terms, this is known as the self. So each brain is responsible for this self experience. You call yourself myself, and so on. So every brain that comes to exist does this I sensation. And it was the fact of a brain coming to exist that's responsible for your subjective experience. So if you imagine a universe that's completely devoid of all life, but then a brain comes to exist, then the I sensation is occurring. Now, it doesn't matter which brain comes to exist, the I sensation is still occurring. So we have to ask ourselves, after we die, will there still be the I sensation after we die? And the answer is yes. If you have a room full of candles and you blow out one of the candles, you still have fire after that specific flame has went out. There's still fire. So it's very much, it's similar to that. There's still going to be subjective experience, awareness after you die. There will be, you won't go into some kind of blankness or a state of nothingness after you cease to exist, if that's in fact what happens after we die. So just as you were unable to impede or stop awareness or subjective awareness from coming after non-existence, once again, you'll not be able to stop awareness from coming after non-existence because you won't exist to stop it. So if death is once again non-existence, then because all it took was to get the current sense of awareness, the current experience was for a brain to come into existence. You did not exist, but then a brain came to exist, and then awareness is what came after your non-existence. So if you don't exist once again, but there are brains that come into existence after you cease to exist, then death too will be followed by one of the awarenesses, awareness itself being done by one of the brains that still exist after, or come to exist after you've died. You won't be in some kind of black void, or there won't be some kind of nothingness or blankness after you die, because there's still experience occurring in the universe. It still exists. It's very simple, really. Back to the thought experiment of only one brain being in the universe. If that brain is not the brain that's currently listening to this audio, then the brain that does come to exist in this thought experiment will produce consciousness. And so that is the consciousness that will be imposed. Now let's say that the brain that is listening to this right now is the brain that comes to exist instead of the other brain. So either way, it is the act of a brain existing and being responsible for the existence of awareness itself that is what causes awareness to come after non-existence. So either way, it is the existence of awareness that imposes said awareness. There is no, just because you don't exist, doesn't provide a way to escape or impede the awareness that exists via a brain. So that you have to look at yourself objectively as just a brain. You're being done by a brain. A brain is responsible for you, the self, the self sensation. So it's the same thing again. You didn't exist, but then a brain came to exist, and and that brain's existence caused subjective experience to come after your lack of existing. And so if there will be brains after you don't exist once again, then subjective experience will exist after you don't after this brain dies, and therefore death will be followed by one of those subjective experiences, rather than nothingness or some kind of eternal black void or something like that. We can't say nothing comes after death if experience is going to exist after you die. It doesn't work that way. But there are these people like antinatalists, like David Benatar and so on, Lawrence Anton, that are spreading this idea that it can be better to not be born. If you never existed, you would be spared from pain and so on. But they're not looking at people in an objective sense. You have to look at brains in a generic sense. In a way, you are born no matter what. Again, the self is born no matter what, even if the current self, it isn't the self that was born. Still, self comes to exist. So in a way, you're born no matter what. Self is born no matter what. I is born no matter what. It's just some other brain is doing it, whether it be an animal brain or a human brain or some other brain. There's just no escaping it. But they're prescribing this idea that it can be better to not exist, but whether it's the brain that's listening to this that's generating the I, or some other brain, there's no escaping I. So you can say to yourself, I would have been born either way. And I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about I, the I that we all share, the self, experience itself, subjective awareness itself will exist. And so it's like either way you're born. It's what's important is that experience itself is what comes to exist. So you actually are, in a way, you are experience itself. You are awareness itself. And most antinatalists, they find this unacceptable. Like, if you were never born, you wouldn't want, if you're an antinatalist, you wouldn't want any experience to be imposed if you were never born. After you die, you don't want there to be subjective experience after you die. That is unacceptable for antinatalists. And David Benatar is saying that there's some kind of reward to be reaped if you're never born, something that is better. But how is having some other I, the experience of I, still being imposed any better than whatever, there's just no escape. Lawrence Anton needs to face this. He needs to confront this fact that there's no escaping experience. But he just keeps avoiding it, and he's known about this for a while. I've confronted him about this for a while. Maybe he doesn't understand it. I don't know. But he needs to confront it either way. He's doing this series where he supposedly debunks every criticism of antinatalism. But he has yet to do this one. So hopefully he does this. He'll be forced to admit that there's no escaping experience. And when he does that, he's going to have to admit that it cannot be better to not exist. And so he'll have to stop saying that it will be better to not exist. So will he do that? I highly doubt it. Will David Benatar do it? They're making their living off of spreading this idea that it is better to not exist. So for them to admit that, they basically have to admit defeat.